time at St James's Park. Newcastle United have won 2-1 against Fulham, and they left it very late. Bruno Guimarães with a last minute or 90th minute goal. It wasn't the best performance by Newcastle by any stretch. Really, I thought they were quite lucky to get the win. Fulham had chances in the first half. It's no surprise though that their top scorer this season is own goal. They're really struggling, 4 defeats on the bounce for them, but I thought they were the better team for long stretches, particularly in the first half. Newcastle's goals both came from counter-attacks where they really punished, I think, in transition. I think that was Newcastle's strength in the game, but Nick Woltemade wasn't involved enough. They had chances in the second half and looked toothless. They didn't look like they were going to win. It really wasn't the best performance off the back of Brighton, off the back of Arsenal and Nottingham Forest and everything. The performances haven't been very good in recent weeks, in my opinion, in the Premier League, but the result was absolutely fantastic today and exactly what Newcastle needed in the end. A complete contrast being stood here on Tuesday against Benfica when they were absolutely dominant in the second half and everything felt tighter together. That was the big thing I took from that game, was how well the wingers played next to Woltemade, how well Bruno got involved in attack. But he had that chance in the second half which he really should have put away. We've just spoken to him in the mix zone and he was very, very good form again, but steps up again and just takes responsibility. And I've often said in my defence of Bruno Guimarães that he is underrated by a lot of Newcastle fans, which sounds crazy because he's obviously a fan favourite. You hear every single time that the announcers read out his name, Bruno, and it booms around St James's Park. He is absolutely adored on Tyneside, but people don't give him enough credit for always being the man to have the big moment. I asked him about this and he said he has been asked this season to get further forward and be more involved with Nick Woltemade, obviously, because there's been a lack of creativity, and there's a little bit of a difference obviously with Isak, who dropped back and got forward and was much more of a complete forward than Woltemade, could drop back and also play off the shoulder. Was a much easier player to play around, I'm assuming, than Woltemade is, as good as Woltemade has been. But yeah, it was a difficult performance, a difficult game to watch at times. A better team than Fulham would have punished Newcastle, and it felt like actually towards the end of the game that more likely it was going to be a defeat and a repeat of the game last season when they turned it around in the second half, because Kevin came on and gave Kieran Trippier a really, really difficult time. He's a real firecracker. I'm really impressed with him. But as I said at the top of the video, you can tell why Fulham don't have many goal scorers. Obviously Raul Jimenez was a threat today physically, but didn't look like scoring himself. They do miss Rodrigo Muniz, and I think a better team than Fulham today would have punished Newcastle because they were passive in midfield. There wasn't enough creativity, there wasn't enough commanding. And I've said in my preview in this week on YouTube that maybe Louis Miley needs a definition in his game. Maybe he isn't a 6, maybe he's more of an 8 who you're not relying on to dictate the plays, because Newcastle really do look a lot more passive and they don't look able to control games, because this was the situation in the first half against Benfica as well, without Sandro Tonali in the midfield. He came on and I think Newcastle did begin to have more of a say in the game and did begin to dominate the possession and created more chances from that moment, but obviously the heavy reliance on Tonali has been a little bit exposed this week as well. Ultimately it's 3 points. Bruno steps up once again to show himself to be Newcastle's talisman in many ways, Newcastle's big game player. We talk about Woltemade being impressive, we talked about Isak last season, talk about Tonali being the most important player, and I absolutely think Tonali is the most important player, who showed it today even just by coming onto the pitch in the second half, and everything else just naturally felt a little bit calm and a little bit better. But the big moment often comes from Bruno. He steps up when it matters, and he did so again. He was criticised as a captain at times when he was first given the role. He took him time to really build into it and get to that level, but I think he's absolutely done that now. He's become Newcastle's most reliable player. When they need a player, when they need someone to step up, it's often him. But there needs to be much more going forward. I don't know why Jacob Ramsey didn't play. I think Joe Linton had a decent game statistically, a lot of tackles, and the fans were loving what he did at the end, and he was cheered off as he usually is. But I thought it was a mistake not to play Ramsey in this game, and for long periods you didn't see somebody take the game by the scruff of the neck and get the ball forward, play the ball forward enough. I thought Miley was a little bit more passive today than he was, and we've seen him in previous games. Bruno had his moment but also should have scored earlier. there's lots of things to build on, but ultimately the only thing that really matters is the result. Newcastle got a crucial win in a game that was very, very difficult and could have been bananas. And in the second half, as I say, I didn't feel like Newcastle were going to go on to win that game. So they got away with it a bit, but I'll be back tomorrow to give you my full thoughts from my office.
So I watched the game back and I've picked out a couple of things that I want to talk about from the game. The first thing is, I think maybe I was a little bit harsh on Anthony Gordon in my initial thoughts, because I thought he flattered to deceive and didn't build on his performance against Benfica, and obviously he didn't have the impact that he had against Benfica, and it was a very emotional game. And Bruno and Eddie Howe speaking after the game about the difficulty of going Tuesday to Saturday, especially when those big Champions League games take so much out of you as well. It's not just the fact that you're playing two games, but the nature of that game against Benfica, the energy that's been put into it, particularly from Gordon. He didn't get into the game as much, but actually watching back the highlights and thinking about it, I think he did do quite a lot. Obviously, he set up Jacob Murphy's second chance in the first half that he really should have scored to almost put the game to bed. And then he laid the ball on the plate for Bruno Guimarães in the second half. So the two big chances that Newcastle missed and squandered to really put this game to bed were down to Anthony Gordon, and also the fact that I don't think Newcastle got him into the game enough. I mean, Kenny Tete did fairly well against him, and that's not really ideal considering the fact that he was booked in the first 2 minutes. Really, that should have been the way Newcastle went. They should have found Gordon at every single possibility, and they didn't really do that enough. Maybe that's something that the team has to take more responsibility for, not getting him into the game, because I've seen a couple of games this season where that has been the case, where when he's got on the ball, he's done something. He just didn't feel like, to me, that he got at Tete enough. Really, that should have been Newcastle's first port of call when attacking down the left and getting at Tete because he was booked. They didn't make that pay. Let me know in the comment section what you thought on Gordon's performance. The other thing I really wanted to talk about was Will Osula. Another cameo performance, but what a big improvement he's made in the last few weeks. I watched back my video from Wolves the other day, and I was really scathing of him. He came on for Voltemade, I think, with about half an hour to go, 25 minutes to go, and he just didn't look like he was capable or really making any progress with what he was doing. Put a lot of effort in, ran around a lot, but it wasn't sort of coherent. There was no knowing when to run, there was no knowing when to press, there was no knowing what to do when the ball got to him, and it just didn't look like the sort of player that was ready to step into those shoes that Voltemade has made so difficult to step into in some ways. But since then, I think every single time I've seen him, again in cameos, but he's made a big difference. He's done something that's obviously the assist in Belgium. He's made a difference in at least one way every time I've seen him in a few minutes of gameplay. And he came on, immediately pressed the goalkeeper, getting the ball running, cutting inside. Looks like a sort of greyhound when he runs as well. So powerful and looks really menacing, and obviously did that against Bradford in the Cup when he started in that game, scored a couple of goals there. So a really good performance from Osula, but as I say, the fact that he wasn't doing that and wouldn't have done that, I think, this season, and as I say, after the Wolves game, it wasn't just me. I remember being stood in the mix zone. We were all talking about what's going to happen with Will Osula. This is the season where he's supposed to be growing, and obviously that failed move to Eintracht Frankfurt felt like a real missed opportunity. But now every time you watch him, he looks like he's capable of doing something in a Newcastle shirt and contributing to the way that Newcastle play, and in the more traditional sense of a striker, because Newcastle don't have that with Voltemade at the moment. They don't have a player who tends to run in behind. He drops deep and does everything that he does so brilliantly, but he doesn't run in behind. I think Newcastle have lacked that at times this season. Obviously, when Johan Wissa comes back, that's the aim for him. But Will Osula just looked like a big threat in this game, and obviously the running, the shot, that led to Bruno Guimarães scoring really looked like development and growth. And Eddie Howe sort of said as much after the game, and also made the point that he's still nursing an ankle injury as well. So there is a lot of development from Will Osula. Obviously, don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but what do you think? Is he going to be key for Newcastle this season? Is he going to have a big role to play, a bigger role than maybe we thought he would? I thought this season was going to be more 20-25 minutes, sub-appearances, development on that side, but maybe he can start the odd cup game or be more of an option off the bench rather than just someone to run the clock down or give a few minutes here and there. Maybe he can genuinely make an impact and show himself to be worthy of a place in this squad, which has got such high standards. am I getting too far ahead of myself? But every single time I've seen him since, and I haven't rated him on my Patreon player ratings because he's had so few minutes, but I think I will have to give him a rating, despite only coming on for 4 or 5 minutes in this game, because of what he did. And I'm seeing that every single time I see him now. I've seen him ever since the Wolves game really make a contribution, a really big performance from him, and I hope he really picks up from here and carries on in this way. Thanks so much for joining me. Like, share and subscribe. You can also join me on Patreon for player ratings, instant reaction from yesterday's game as well, and a pitch side preview, plus plenty more other content as well, like your thoughts and mailbags, hopefully to come as well. Join for a 7-day free trial for $4.99 with the link below. See you next time. Cheers.